So earlier today, New York Magazine released a really interesting interview/profile article on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the major impact she's had on American politics, even though she's only been in Congress for 1 year. But one quote jumped out of that interview for a lot of media, and it was where AOC said that in any other country, Joe Biden and I wouldn't be in the same party, but here in the United States, we are in the same party. And I want to talk a bit about that quote, but there's other things in this interview that I feel are really important, and I want to touch on those as well. They might even be more important than that quote. But on to that quote, AOC is largely correct, but I don't strictly see this as an attack on Joe Biden as it's been portrayed. It's important to note that in most Western democratic nations, there's multiple parties represented at the national and regional level in politics. In some of these countries, like Canada and Britain, where there's two principal parties, there's nonetheless many smaller parties that win major levels of support in the House of Commons in elected office. Often the prime minister comes from one of the two bigger parties, but the smaller parties can play really influential roles. And in Canada, for instance, where there's provincial governments like there are state governments in the United States, sometimes those third parties win power at the state level. In any case, what matters is the US is a very, very pure two-party system that doesn't really exist in many other countries in the democratic West. And so the parties are naturally much bigger. They represent wider swaths of the population. And the Democratic Party, because it sort of represents much of the center, given the rightward movement of the Republicans, also captures the center and the left. So I don't really see AOC attacking Joe Biden there. I think it's a really interesting prescription of what that means for American politics. And I think what AOC is trying to get at is that there's a real battle right now about what the Democratic Party means, what it stands for, and what it's going to mean and stand for in the coming years and generations. And AOC notes this in this interview. This quote has sort of gone under the radar, but she makes it very clear that this primary contest, and AOC has endorsed Bernie Sanders, and I feel it's quickly becoming a Bernie Sanders versus Joe Biden two-horse race. She says it's about the soul of the Democratic Party. This primary process, what's happening right now, is about the soul of the entire party. It's about how that party views recent history and how that party wants to address the challenges the country faces with an eye to that history. So, in simple terms, what she says is there is a segment of the population, and this is the segment represented by Biden, who feels everything was fine before Donald Trump. Before the fall of 2016, when Donald Trump shocked the world and beat Hillary Clinton, everything was fine. And that we just have to get back to that time before Trump. And so in essence, people like Joe Biden are running on a status quo or turn back the clock to the Obama-Biden years campaign to basically say Trump never happened, Trump never existed, the social and political and economic and cultural, tensions that created Donald Trump don't exist anymore, and we can all move forward pretending Donald Trump was a phenomenon that never happened. But AOC and many of her people, including Bernie Sanders, don't see it that way. Certainly, Donald Trump is the problem in many, many ways. Donald Trump is the pressing issue. He and Republicans like him need to be defeated. But to suggest that Donald Trump created the flaws in American society that helped him get elected is wrong. Donald Trump perpetuated them. Donald Trump gave them a microphone. Donald Trump amplified them. Donald Trump channeled them in ugly, ugly ways. But the discrimination and inequality and distrust and precarity and regional inequalities that helped to make Donald Trump president weren't created by Donald Trump. They were created through generations of policies by both Republicans and Democrats that made it so that American society became increasingly unequal, increasingly distrusting, increasingly cutthroat, increasingly combative. And all of this together helped to create the context where Donald Trump became president. Bernie Sanders understands that. AOC understands that. And so what she's saying is that her goal, not just with this primary, but in her long potential career as a politician, is to actually push for a Democratic Party that recognizes the systemic challenges of American society and wants to overcome them through bold social, political, economic, and cultural reform. That's the goal. 100%. That's the soul of the Democratic Party, and therefore that's in a sense the soul of the United States of America. And so AOC has noted that people like Joe Biden, who for a long time were part of the problem, in many ways shouldn't be playing a role in trying to, champion themselves as the anti-Donald Trump, when in many ways they played a role in creating the context that Trump, rose up from. That's really crucial to note. She's also noted this with regard to Joe Biden and others who didn't do anything about the climate crisis and yet now are pushing for a quote-unquote moderate approach to climate change, even though that moderate approach is no longer feasible because 30 years ago they didn't do anything, meaning that we need more ambitious approaches now, like a Green New Deal. This is what makes AOC so important. Bernie Sanders really helped to start this movement of progressive politics going back into the mainstream. But you are going to need people at the grassroots level in the House of Representatives helping to build that next generation of progressive legislators. AOC is doing that work, and I think that this interview really highlights that she understands the challenges facing American society. She understands what's at stake, and she understands that Bernie Sanders becoming president is vital, but that this project goes beyond 2020, goes beyond 2024, and is really about the next 50 years even of American politics. That's why AOC isn't just a leader now, but she's a visionary leader for generations to come.